Hello from Mindset Daily, wishing you a day full of health, peace, and happiness. Thank you for watching the Mindset Daily channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe to support us. Thank you so much.
What if the biggest reason your life feels stuck isn't fate, but the invisible line you refuse to raise? What if the outcomes you keep repeating aren't because you're unlucky, but because of what you silently tolerate? And what if the key to transforming everything, your results, relationships, even your self-worth, starts with one quiet decision? If your life keeps circling the same frustrations, repeating the same disappointments, and hitting the same invisible ceiling, it's not luck, and it's not coincidence. It's your standard. The world doesn't hand you what you dream about. It hands you what you're willing to accept. And what you accept is shaped by the standard you set for yourself, consciously or not. Why does this matter? Because when you raise your standard, everything tied to it starts to rise too. Your thinking sharpens. Your behavior elevates. Even the quality of the people you allow into your life begins to shift. You stop settling for survival and start aiming for significance. Change your standard, and you change everything that flows from it. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you how shifting this internal line, your standard, can completely reshape your outcomes, your relationships, and your entire reality. You don't rise to your hopes. You rise, or fall, to the level of what you're willing to accept. That's the hard truth. You don't get what you wish for. You get what you tolerate. And a life you're currently living is not the result of fate. It's a reflection of your standard. It reflects what you demand of yourself and what you refuse to settle for. If someone accepts average, then average is what they'll receive. Not because they're incapable of more, but because they stopped reaching for it. They stopped stretching beyond comfort. That's what makes the difference. So what is a standard? It's your internal line in the sand. It's the moment you say, this is who I am, and this is what I will and will not stand for. When you raise that line, your life begins to change in response. But when you lower it, when you excuse laziness, delay your dreams, or surround yourself with weak influence, your life will follow that path too. So how do you begin to raise your standard? It starts in the smallest places, in the daily choices, in the private moments when no one's watching. And that's exactly where we begin next. It starts in the smallest places. The time you wake up, the order in your room, the integrity of your word. Do you follow through on what you say, even when no one holds you accountable? Do you clean up after yourself, or do you leave small messes for tomorrow? You cannot lead others with strength if you cannot lead yourself with discipline. You cannot command a great army if you cannot command your morning. Picture this. One man rises at dawn. He irons his shirt with care. He sits quietly and writes down 3 things he will conquer today. Not because anyone told him not to impress others, but because this is his code. This is his standard. It's who he is. Now compare that to the man who wakes late, stumbles into the day already behind, letting his mood dictate his moves. He reacts. He doesn't lead. How differently do you think those 2 men walk into the world? Ask yourself honestly, what have you been tolerating that can no longer be allowed? What areas of your life have you accepted as just the way things are, even though you know they're dragging you down? Who around you reinforces weakness instead of strength? And here's a question that could change everything. What would happen if today you declared, no more excuses? This is my new standard. Your life bends in the direction of your standards. So if you want your life to rise, bend your standards upward. Everything else, your habits, your relationships, your results, will begin to rise with it. Standards define your identity, not motivation. Because a man who waits for motivation is like a boat waiting for the wind, governed by the weather of his emotions. A man who lives by standard, he is the wind. He is the storm. He generates momentum, no matter the forecast. Too many people believe success requires inspiration, but that belief is a trap. It convinces you that you must feel good before you do good. But look at the lives of the most accomplished people in history. Were they built on comfort? No, they were built on resolve, on repetition, on identity, on the quiet, unwavering declaration, this is who I am, even when I don't feel like it. So ask yourself, what kind of person are you becoming? Not just in public, but in private. Are you the kind of man who pushes forward when no one is watching? Are you the one who acts with discipline even when no one is offering applause? Identity is not built in one grand moment. It's built in thousands of small ones. You build it through repetition, through keeping promises to yourself, through standing tall when every part of you wants to shrink. That's where it begins. Start with one standard and raise it. Maybe your standard is simple. I don't quit, or I keep my word, or I walk into every room with purpose. Whatever it is, let that standard become your armor. Let it protect you when life presses in. Let it be the line that holds, even when motivation disappears. Now, picture this. A carpenter begins each day not by building, but by sharpening his tools. No one tells him to. He doesn't need to be reminded. He does it because he understands a dull blade builds crooked houses. He's not just constructing walls. He's building a legacy, not by accident, but by a personal code. So ask yourself, what code are you living by? Are you grounded in something firm? Or are you drifting with whatever the day brings? If I followed you for a week, silently observing, what would your actions say about who you are becoming? Raise the code. Make it visible. Let it become your signature in the world. Let there be no confusion about what you stand for. Most people spend their energy trying to raise their goals, focusing on the ceiling, what they hope to achieve. But what if that's not where the transformation begins? What if the real power lies not in raising your ceiling, but in raising your floor? Ask yourself, what is the lowest level of behavior you're willing to accept from yourself? Even on a bad day, that's the real indicator of who you are becoming. Because you don't rise to the level of your aspirations. You fall to the level of your rituals. Excellence isn't born from ambition alone. It's born from standards so solid, so ingrained, that even your worst day outperforms someone else's best. True success belongs to the person whose worst day is still consistent, aligned, and purpose-driven. So raise your floor. Redefine what your bad day looks like. Instead of collapsing into laziness or distraction, could your lowest point become a moment of reflection? Could it be a quiet session of journaling, planning, or preparing? Not retreating? What if, instead of escaping, you studied? Instead of reacting in frustration, you spoke with grace? Imagine that. Your fallback behavior becomes your training ground. Picture a soldier who, after marching all day, still takes the time to polish his boots. He doesn't say, I'm too tired. He says, this is the code, and I live by it. And that's where greatness begins. Not in the peaks, but in how you behave when you're tired, uncertain, or unseen. He says, this is the standard. And that quiet declaration speaks volumes. So, ask yourself, what does your worst day actually look like? Not your best, not the day when everything clicks, but the day when nothing goes right. If you were to raise your floor by just 20%, imagine how drastically your life could transform. Maybe not by 20%, but by 200%. Refuse to collapse. Refuse to spiral. Even when you're stumbling, let your steps carry strength. Let your fall still face forward. Why? Because your floor, that lowest acceptable behavior, is the silent architect of your destiny. It's what keeps your foundation steady when storms hit. It's what ensures you rise, even when everything else says you shouldn't. Standards are magnets. They attract allies, and they repel weakness. A man with standards doesn't become a beacon because he tries to impress. He becomes a light because he refuses to dim. He doesn't need to shout, to perform, or to seek validation. He simply stands rooted, clear on who he is, what he demands of himself, and what he's unwilling to compromise. Sure, not everyone will understand it. In fact, many won't. Some will mock you. Others will feel uncomfortable around you. They'll mistake your clarity for arrogance. They'll label your refusal to settle as inflexibility. They might even try to break what they cannot comprehend. But here's the truth. Those who carry strength in their spine and truth in their spirit, they'll recognize you. Because like finds like, and when you raise your standards, you're not just changing your world, you're sending out a silent signal. This is who I am. This is what I allow. You're not here to attract everyone. You're not here to be accepted by the masses. You're here to walk with those who walk in alignment, not those who drag you back into comfort and compromise. The man of standards doesn't chase attention. He builds value. He becomes a monument, not to trends, not to likes, but to principle. And principles? They outlast everything. They aren't shaken by opinion. They don't bend to pressure. They're not shaped by moods. They're anchored deep within. When you live from that place, you don't need to demand loyalty. You embody it. You don't plead for respect. You command it quietly, consistently, and without ever raising your voice. And all of this identity, this influence, this strength, it begins with a single refusal. Refusing to laugh at mediocrity. Refusing to surround yourself with those who celebrate weakness. Refusing to bite your tongue when the truth is needed most. Because let's be clear, a man who stays silent when it's time to speak is not peaceful. He's passive. And passivity, let's be honest, is poison. It's the slow erosion of everything strong within you. To live with standards is to live with absolute clarity. You say what you mean, and you mean what you say. Your yes isn't tossed around, it carries weight. Your no draws a line, a boundary that protects your peace. Even when it costs you comfort, it earns you something far more valuable, strength. And strength, unlike comfort, is the substance of legacy. It doesn't fade with time. It builds kingdoms. Now imagine a ship's captain. Would he let men who disrespect order climb aboard his vessel? Would he tolerate crew members who delay the mission, ignore discipline, or put the journey at risk? Absolutely not. Why? Because the sea does not forgive the careless, and neither does life. A man of standards selects his crew based not on charm or convenience, but on character and principle. So look around you. Who in your circle is pushing you forward? Who's pulling you back? What small behaviors have you been tolerating that quietly weaken your resolve? And here's the bold question. What if your standards became the filter through which you rebuilt your world? What if, from this day forward, you refuse to allow anything or anyone that didn't align with the highest version of who you are becoming? This is where the deeper truth reveals itself. You weren't born to blend in. You were born to rise. And when you rise, others take notice. You show them a path that they didn't even know existed. Your courage gives them permission to be bold. Your standards become a mirror, reflecting back what's possible if they, too, chose to live by code instead of comfort. So don't lower the bar to make others feel safe. Raise it, and watch who grows tall enough to meet it. That's how leaders are born, not through speeches, not through applause, but through example. Through living at a level that demands more, not just from others, but first from yourself. Because pain is temporary. Standards, they're eternal. Comfort fades fast, blown away by the winds of distraction and doubt. But the man who lives by principle, the man who refuses to bend his code, he builds something the seasons cannot shake, something time cannot erase. He is not swayed by passing emotions, shifting trends, or the storms of trial. He stands anchored, not in chance, but in choice. Anchored in quiet discipline, in the silent defiance of everything in the world that tries to soften him. Most men, they wait. They wait until pain knocks before they prepare. They wait for crisis to decide who they are. And when the challenge finally arrives, they collapse. They scramble for footing, grasp for excuses, and surrender to the chaos. But not the man who has chosen his code ahead of time. Not the one who has declared within himself, "This is what I stand for. And no matter what comes, I do not move." That man, he expects the trial. He doesn't fear the test, he welcomes it. Not because he is reckless, but because he is ready. You must see the truth here. Strength is not built in the storm. It is revealed there. The man who endures the storm with his head held high, he is the one who trained during the stillness. He forged his character in the quiet, not in the chaos. He lifted the weight of his own discipline when no one was watching. Because pain will visit, delay will press in, doubt will whisper like a shadow in your ear. That's inevitable. But those things do not shake the man who has already decided. His standard is not a discussion. It's not a mood. It's not dependent on how he feels. He doesn't ask, "Should I keep going?" when the road turns steep, because he already answered that question in the silence of his preparation. This decision, this unshakable standard, must be set before the winds howl, before the tests come, before the world throws distractions at your feet. When no one is watching, when quitting would be easy, and you still choose to press forward. That is the moment legends are born. The lost man waits for the battle, and then folds. The legendary man prepares for it in advance, and then conquers it. He does not forge his weapons in silence or safety. No, he works in the fire. The heat is intense, the sparks fly, and the iron resists every strike. The hammer is heavy, unrelenting in his hands. Yet he does not complain. He does not pause. He does not ask for it to be easier. Why? Because the blade, his creation, is worth it. The outcome is greater than the obstacle. Now ask yourself, what discomfort have you been avoiding? What dream have you kept delaying because it asks too much of you? Be honest. Deep down, you already know what it is. That one task you keep postponing. That one decision you keep telling yourself you'll make one day. But what if? What if today became the day you drew the line? The day you said, no matter how long it takes, no matter what it costs me, I do not break. That decision, made in quiet certainty, becomes your inner vault. A fireproof chamber where your strength lives, where your grit is stored, where your greatness is guarded. Feed it every day. Guard it like your future depends on it, because it does. And never, ever let the comfort of the world steal what only hardship can build. Because comfort is seductive. It whispers lies in soft tones. It tells you to rest when it's time to rise. It says you're safe while you slowly slip backward. But character echoes across generations. Even when your name fades, the standards you lived by will ripple through the lives you touched, the work you did, the legacy you built with blistered hands and relentless focus. So let me ask you, with all sincerity, what are you building? A life of comfort or a life of character? Because you can't build both. You must choose. Standards are not limitations. They are lifelines. They are the walls that elevate your life above the ordinary and carry you into the extraordinary. Standards are what give you a reason to rise when everything inside you says lie down. They're the silent push behind every act of discipline, the steady hand that keeps you moving forward when the path is steep. So set yours high. Set them now, not when it's convenient, because when the storm comes, and it will, you won't hesitate. You won't fold. You will act without needing to think, because your decision has already been made. And that, right there, is the difference between the man who is moved by the season and the man who masters it. Your standards must live in the open. They cannot be private whispers you keep locked away in silence. It's easy to speak of discipline when no one's watching, to claim integrity in moments of solitude. But real standards, true ones, don't live in the dark. They announce themselves in the light. A man of unwavering conviction does not hide his values in pages of a journal or behind quiet prayers. He brings them into the world. He walks with them. They are his armor, his compass, his identity made visible. He doesn't need to argue. He doesn't need to boast. His actions do the talking. His daily choices echo his character more clearly than any speech ever could. And in that echo, others hear the truth. There's no confusion about who he is. He doesn't need to convince anyone of his strength. His consistency does that for him, over and over again. Because a hidden standard won't save you when the winds shift. It won't protect you when chaos arrives. It won't help you lead or inspire. If your values are buried, they will wither. And when life becomes heavy, when temptation knocks, when the pressure mounts, you'll be more likely to compromise. But when your standard is declared, when it lives out loud, visible in your habits, audible in your words, observable in your choices, you are bound to it. And that binding is not a burden. It's a lifeline. It's what keeps you grounded when everything else tries to pull you off course. And that bond between you and your standard becomes your greatest strength. But how do you bring that standard into the light where it truly matters? You live it. You don't merely speak about it. And you certainly don't hide behind it. You declare it not through loud words, but through consistent action, through unwavering discipline, quiet sacrifice, and the daily decision to show up when it's difficult. You hold the line when no one else will. You continue forward when the road grows lonely, when quitting whispers in your ear. That is where your standard is tested, and that is where it is proven. If you believe in discipline, let it be visible in the smallest things. The way you rise in the morning, the way you carry yourself, the way you honor your promises, especially the ones you make to yourself. If you value excellence, show in how you complete even the simplest task, in how you prepare when no one's watching, and how you recover from a setback without complaint. Let your standards speak through how you treat others. With consistency, not convenience. Picture this. A teacher steps into a classroom. He doesn't need to raise his voice. His shoes are polished, his shirt is crisp, his shoulders upright. The room quiets, not out of fear, but out of respect. Not for his words, but for the presence he brings. The students rise, not because they're told to, but because they feel they must. His code walks ahead of him. It sets the tone, and in doing so, lifts the entire room. That's what your standard must become. It should enter the space before you do. It should speak for you before you open your mouth. And when you leave, it should still be there, echoing in the air. Not because you demanded it, but because you lived it so clearly that no one could deny it. Ask yourself honestly, what would shift if everyone around you understood your standard with such clarity that they began to rise to meet it? What would happen if your integrity was not a concept you carried inside, but a force others could feel, see, know, without needing explanation? How would your workplace evolve? Your family? Your friendships? A hidden principle slowly dies in the dark. It doesn't just remain unseen, it fades, it weakens, and over time, it vanishes. But a principle that is lived out in the open, with dignity and unwavering consistency, becomes something much greater. It transcends moments. It outlives applause. It doesn't just influence others. It inspires them without trying. It shapes culture. It builds legacies, not merely lives. So don't settle for beliefs that live only in your mind. Don't be content with quiet convictions that never reach the surface. Let your life preach your philosophy. Let your daily choices, the habits you keep, the discipline you uphold, become your loudest message. Because the man who lives his code boldly doesn't just refine himself. He elevates the world around him. His presence changes the atmosphere. His example raises the standard. But here's what many forget. Standards are not created in the heat of the moment. They must be chosen in advance. They must be forged in the quiet, away from the noise, when no one is watching, when no reward is promised, when it's just you and your truth. Because when the moment of pressure arrives, it is too late to wonder what you believe. It's too late to scramble for your values. The kind of man you are must already be decided, long before the challenge knocks. The man who tries to reason his way through temptation in the middle of the storm will stumble. But the man who has already determined his actions, who has already drawn the line in the sand, he stands firm. This is the quiet strength of predetermined decision. It removes the internal battle. It eliminates hesitation. It blocks the door that doubt tries to enter through. When your response is already chosen, your steps are already aligned. There's no gray area, no second guessing, no wavering. Only clarity, only action, only direction. There is no inner courtroom echoing with debates, excuses, or justifications. There is only the clear, unwavering voice of commitment. When you've already decided who you are and how you act, you don't waste energy arguing with yourself. You execute. You move. You lead. That's why you must decide, right now, how you will respond when you're offended. Will you lash out in ego? Or will you hold your ground with composure and grace? Decide now how you will carry yourself when exhaustion creeps in. Will you cut corners, or will you finish the task with pride and discipline? Decide what is absolutely non-negotiable, what you will never accept from yourself, from others, or from the world around you. Because if you don't set those rules in stone, the world will write them for you. And the world? It doesn't reward those who hesitate. It doesn't wait for those who are unsure. It molds the undecided into what's convenient, not what's right. It fills the gap left by indecision with chaos, distraction, and compromise. You become shaped by noise instead of anchored in truth. But predetermined decisions, they aren't about rigid control. They're about deep inner freedom. The man who has already made his choice is no longer at the mercy of impulse. His emotions don't own him. Circumstances don't sway him. He steps into each moment like a judge entering the courtroom. Not to guess what justice looks like, but to enact it, to embody it. Picture that judge. He doesn't rewrite the law each day. He doesn't waver based on feelings or pressure. His rulings are swift because the law is already clear. His authority is rooted in principle, and that clarity brings order. That's the power of having your personal code set in advance. Now ask yourself, where in your life are the lines still blurry? Where are you still negotiating with your weaker self? Where do you keep saying, I'll decide when the moment comes, knowing full well that the moment is when you're most likely to fold? Because the man who makes the decision in the storm is the man who sinks. But the one who chooses before the clouds gather, he stands. He walks taller, not because of arrogance, but because of alignment. His back is straight because his convictions are solid. His words carry weight because they come from certainty, not confusion. And people trust him not because he's flawless, but because he first learned how to trust himself. But the man who waits, he lives in hesitation. He's a leaf in the wind, reacting to every gust, apologizing for every misstep, always adjusting himself to fit in instead of standing tall to lead. He builds nothing that lasts because his foundation is always shifting. One day strong, the next unsure. And every single day he postpones his standards is a day he leases his life to chance. Think about that. Are you living as an owner of your time, or are you renting your future to circumstance? A man on loan to the moment cannot claim mastery over his mission. But here's the truth, that cycle can end, and it doesn't require a revolution. It only takes one powerful decision. Decide now. Decide who you are. Decide what lines you will never cross. Decide what you stand up for, and what you will never bow to, no matter how heavy the pressure. And when that decision is made, plant it deep. Never borrow your strength again. Because once a man sets his principles in stone, he cannot be bought. He cannot be broken. And he most certainly cannot be bullied. He becomes immovable, anchored in identity, steady when the world is shaking. And in a world that compromises for comfort, he becomes the rare one who stands firm for truth. Remember this. It's not what you do once that shapes your life. It's what you repeat. It's not brilliance in a moment, but discipline across time. That's where real power lies. Greatness isn't built in a flash of inspiration. It's built in the quiet grind, decision after decision, day after day. Like the oak tree that doesn't rise overnight. It digs deep before it grows tall, pushing roots into the unseen soil, anchoring strength even when the world sees nothing. Or the blacksmith, who doesn't forge a blade with one mighty swing. He strikes again and again. He folds the steel, applies the heat, shapes the edge, until strength and sharpness are earned. And your life will not transform in a single flash of inspiration. That moment of motivation, no matter how powerful, will fade. What remains is what you do afterward. You must train yourself in persistence. You must commit to the process. You must do the right thing, not once, but long enough that it becomes second nature, woven into the fabric of who you are. This is the truth most people overlook. Consistency is the invisible engine behind every kind of greatness. It's not flashy. It doesn't shout, but it is relentless. It is the quiet rhythm that moves mountains over time. Consistency builds habit. Habit shapes confidence. And confidence, once repeated enough, begins to reshape identity. And when identity changes, when you no longer just do the work, but become the kind of person who lives it, your future can't help but evolve with it. The man who shows up every day is not invincible because of talent. He becomes unstoppable because he simply refuses to stop. He keeps showing up long after the crowd leaves, long after the spark fades. He doesn't rely on motivation. He builds momentum. His actions no longer feel forced. They flow because they come from who he now is. Picture the farmer. Every morning before sunrise, he walks to his field. He waters the soil, pulls the weeds, tills the ground. Day after day, week after week. No green shoots. No applause. His neighbors shake their heads. They think he's wasting time. But the farmer doesn't answer with words. He answers with effort. Because he's not working for approval. He's working for harvest. And when the season turns, when the rains come and the soil breaks open with life, it is his field that flourishes, while theirs remains barren. So ask yourself, are your habits aligned with the future you say you want? What are you rehearsing each day? Is it mastery or mediocrity? Are you crafting excellence or just entertaining excuses? Because your routine is either making you resilient or it's planting seeds of regret. Excellence isn't found in a burst of energy. It's carved into your character through repetition. It's created when you choose the right thing without anyone noticing. It's born in silence, tested in exhaustion, and revealed not in moments, but over years. If you wait to feel ready, you'll never start. If you wait for perfect conditions, you'll never gain momentum. The path to mastery doesn't begin when you feel like it. It begins when you choose to act, even when everything inside you hesitates. That's why setting a standard is so vital. But it must be a standard that's repeatable, something clear, something small enough to begin today, yet strong enough to build on over time. Then repeat it, over and over, until your body moves without needing to be convinced, until your mind stops arguing, until the people and circumstances around you adjust. Not because you demanded it, but because you've demonstrated it. The environment shifts when you do. Never forget this. Consistency does more than change your actions. It reshapes what you believe about yourself. Every time you show up, even in silence, you're casting a vote for the man you are becoming. Each small act of discipline is a brick in the foundation of your future character. You don't need perfection. You need persistence. You don't need certainty about the end. You just need faith in the process. Because once that process becomes who you are, not just what you do, the result will follow. It has no choice. So start again today. Start with something so small that it leaves no room for excuses. Start quietly, but start. Then repeat it tomorrow, and the day after, and again and again. Because the man who remains standing when others quit, the man who keeps showing up when no one is watching, that is the man who earns the results others only wish for. That is the true power of consistency. It isn't distant. It's available to you right now, at this moment. Standards are what turn a dream into reality. A dream without a standard? That's just fantasy. It might light up your imagination, spark emotion, maybe even give you hope. But without a code to guide it, it will drift just like a ship with no rudder. But a dream, anchored to a standard, but a code of conduct, a clear, personal rule for how you live, becomes more than just a belief. It becomes a blueprint. And when that blueprint is followed with steady, consistent discipline, something remarkable happens. What once felt impossible begins to shift into reach. The vague becomes visible. The dream starts to feel real. Because desire alone isn't enough. Desire is merely the spark that ignites the process. To truly build success, you must do it with your own hands. Day by day, habit by habit, effort layered upon effort. And the building blocks you use? They are your standards. Your standards shape everything. How you communicate, how you work under pressure, how you rise after you've fallen. Vision may give you the image of what's possible, but it is your standard that guides your hand and steadies your steps. Without that standard, your energy drifts. Your actions lose precision. Your motivation wanes. Ambition starts strong, but without discipline, it buckles under fatigue. It collapses under pressure. What once roared with purpose becomes little more than a fading whisper. But when a man lives by a high standard, when he roots his actions in principle rather than feeling, the overwhelming starts to make sense. The chaos becomes a plan. The mountain in front of him doesn't disappear, but becomes climbable. Not because he feels brave every moment, but because he follows a code. His emotions no longer drive the mission. His standard does. And when you combine a clear vision with an unshakable standard, that's when a man becomes unstoppable. His movements have direction, his actions have weight. He walks with purpose, and his hands are trained by the discipline of repetition. So ask yourself, what kind of future do you really want? Get specific. Think boldly. Then follow with a harder question. What kind of man builds that future? What values does he live by when no one is watching? How does he respond to failure? What routines does he commit to before the world demands his attention? What kind of discipline does he uphold, even in silence? Because no matter how big the dream, you will never rise higher than your character. And your character is shaped, refined, and revealed by your standards. Your dreams will only rise as high as your standards. No further, no faster. Without a solid foundation beneath them, they cannot grow. Think of the architect. He envisions a grand cathedral, majestic spires, sweeping arches, walls that capture sunlight like stained glass catching fire. The vision is breathtaking, but vision alone doesn't raise stone. Without structure, without precise measurements, without clear rules to guide the process, the dream remains just that, an idea on paper. But when that architect draws with intention, defining height, width, depth, his imagination transforms into architecture. His vision takes shape. His lines become walls. His sketches become legacy. Something generations can walk through, touch, and remember. That's what standards do. They take the unseen and give it structure. They transform passion into plan, energy into execution, and potential into permanence. So ask yourself, where have you been drifting in hope when you should be building in discipline? What areas of your vision are still floating in emotion, untouched by action? Where have you been waiting for things to align instead of choosing to direct them? Because the framework of your future isn't made of wishes. It's made of non-negotiables, daily decisions, consistent effort, and a code you refuse to break. When you declare, "This is my standard," and you live it without compromise, something begins to shift. The world may not change immediately, but your energy does. Your focus sharpens. Your habits align. And over time, the world begins to bend. Not to your wishes, but to your will. You don't need a new dream. You need a higher standard. One that elevates your mornings, disciplines your thoughts, strengthens your values. One that keeps building even when progress feels invisible. Write that standard. Raise it. Live it. And what once felt unreachable will begin to take form right in front of you. Because the man who lives by a standard doesn't wait for the future to arrive. He builds it, brick by brick, day by day. And through that silent discipline, his life becomes the sermon he never has to speak. What you say may echo for a moment, but how you live, now, that is watched for a lifetime. Your standards speak far louder than your words ever could. In a world saturated with noise and endless talking, it's not the loudest voice that captures attention. It's the clearest example. When a man lives with unwavering discipline and principle, he becomes a beacon, not through speeches, but through his walk, through consistency, through integrity. People don't truly change because of arguments or explanations. They change when they witness someone live differently. They follow demonstration, not decoration. If you want to influence others, don't raise your voice. Raise your behavior. Let your choices speak where words fall short. Let your actions be the sermon, and your life the pulpit. If you want to inspire someone, let your daily habits do the talking. Let your discipline become the teacher. Let your consistency become the conviction. Because in the end, it's not about saying the right thing. It's about being it. Anyone can speak wisdom, but it takes a rare kind of man to embody it in silence. You must become the message you want the world to remember. Be the living proof of your own beliefs. Let your dedication speak in the quiet hours. Let your effort explain in moments where others give up. Let your grace reveal itself when no applause follows. And understand this, you don't need a title to lead. You don't need a stage to create impact. You don't need an audience to matter. What you need is a standard. One you hold firmly, without compromise, when no one is watching and no one is cheering. Because people do notice. They notice who shows up early, who works with care, who listens with presence, who speaks less but does more. They notice the man who moves with silent purpose and unshakable calm. Think of the stonecutter, alone in the quarry, chisel in hand, striking the same spot day after day. Not for praise, but because he knows the stone will break eventually. No crowd gathers. No applause rings out. And yet, he continues. The stonecutter does not pause. He hammers. He shapes. He endures. Not because anyone is watching, but because he knows the power of steady discipline. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't chase praise. But listen closely, his chisel tells a story. It sings the quiet song of mastery, of commitment, of greatness earned stroke by stroke. And though most pass by without a word, a few stop. They feel something. They sense the gravity of his focus, the rhythm of a man who refuses to quit. That, right there, is how you lead. Not with force, not with empty persuasion, but through unwavering fidelity to your principles. You don't shout to be seen. You draw attention by the clarity of your character. You don't demand respect. You embody it until it becomes undeniable. Ask yourself honestly, what sermon is my life preaching? What do your choices, your routines, your tone teach those around you? What silent message does your behavior send, day after day? If your actions were the only message someone ever received, what would they walk away believing about strength, honor, or commitment? If you want to change the world, you must start where every real change begins, deep within. Raise your standard, but don't raise it for display. Live it in silence. Guard it in solitude. Practice it when no one claps, and defend it even when you stand alone. Over time, your life becomes more than example. It becomes a beacon, a lighthouse for others who are lost in the fog. Because the strongest presence in any room isn't always the one speaking. It's often the one living their truth so visibly, so consistently, so deeply that no words are needed. The world doesn't need more speeches. It needs more standard bearers. More men whose courage is lived, not posted. Whose discipline is practiced, not performed. Whose values are not worn like clothes, but welded into bone. So rise above the noise. Let your life be the message. Let your daily conduct speak with clarity. Let your discipline preach a sermon no storm can silence. Because a higher standard doesn't just ask for more effort. It demands deeper preparation, stronger conviction, and relentless consistency. You cannot expect to reap the rewards of excellence while clinging to the daily habits of mediocrity. Life doesn't grant greatness to those who merely hope for it. It delivers it to those who have prepared in advance. The man who chooses to raise his standards must also raise his level of readiness. Because when opportunity arrives, it's already too late to get ready. Readiness is not formed in the spotlight. It is built in the shadows, in the quiet hours when no one is watching. Greatness is not born in grand moments. It is forged in repetition, in unseen discipline, in the daily decisions that seem small but carry the weight of destiny. When you demand more from life, you must understand, life will demand more from you in return. The man who declares a standard of excellence cannot live like everyone else. He cannot linger in comfort, follow the crowd, or delay what must be done. He must act with urgency, strip away distraction, and train when the world is sleeping. And this training, this preparation, it isn't glamorous. It doesn't draw applause or attention. It doesn't post well on social media. It whispers, not shouts. It shows up in silence, in solitude, without recognition or reward. But that's where separation begins. That is where the man who only speaks about the future is divided from the one who quietly builds it. A high standard requires high effort. There are no shortcuts, no exemptions. If you want to become a man capable of handling greatness, you must live like it before it arrives. You must act each day as though the door of opportunity will open tomorrow, because one day it will. And in that moment, you will either rise to meet it with confidence or shrink beneath it in regret. Picture this: a violinist practicing alone in a quiet room. No stage, no audience, just a bow, strings, and silence. Why does he play with such care when no one hears? Because he's not preparing for applause, he's preparing for mastery. And when the stage arrives, he won't need to rise to the moment. He'll already be there. Day after day, he returns to the same corner of the room. No audience, no spotlight, just the bow in his hand, the strings beneath his fingers, and the discipline in his soul. His fingertips blister, his muscles ache, his mind grows weary. But still, he practices, over and over again. And then, one evening, the curtain rises. The stage is his. And he does not freeze, he flows. Not because the crowd empowers him, but because the price was already paid in private. The applause only echoes the effort already invested. Preparation is the invisible down payment on visible success. It is the hours of unseen training that earn a man the right to lead when all eyes finally turn toward him. It is the standard upheld in silence that gives him the presence to speak without saying a word. So ask yourself honestly, where are you underprepared for the life you claim to want? Which parts of your dream have you left to luck, to timing, to a version of yourself you hope will be stronger someday? What if you trained today as though the opportunity were already en route? What if you prepared not with hesitation, but with certainty, not wondering if, but declaring when? Excellence is not patient. It does not slow down and wait for the unready. It runs forward and rewards the prepared. It belongs to those who practiced in faith. Those who believed so deeply in their purpose that they trained for it before anyone else believed in them. So stop waiting for the call. Stop hoping for the perfect moment. Do not wait for validation, for applause, or for someone to tell you it's your time. Prepare as if that call is already on the way. Prepare as if the door could open tomorrow, because it might. And when it does, there will be no time left to learn, to warm up, or to find your footing. You will either step forward in full readiness, or watch the moment pass you by in quiet regret. Only the prepared will rise. Only the man who respected the unseen hours, who labored when no one watched, will be strong enough to carry the weight of greatness. So start today, not tomorrow, not someday. Train with clear purpose. Read with unwavering focus. Work with full intention. Set your standard high, and then transform yourself into the man who lives up to it, day after day. Because success is never a stroke of luck. It's not random. It is the earned result of consistent, relentless preparation colliding with a moment of opportunity. And when that moment comes, and it always does, you will either rise because you're ready or fall because you waited too long to start. So be ready. Stay ready. Rise with conviction. But understand this. Raising your standard is not just about climbing. It's also about releasing. You can't take everything with you. Not every habit. Not every belief. Not every relationship. When you raise your standard, you must also raise your awareness of what no longer belongs. Because elevation demands elimination. You cannot ascend while clutching the weight of your past. You can't soar while shackled to the patterns that kept you grounded. Old excuses, outdated habits, the comfort of familiarity. These may have served you once, but they're no longer loyal to the future you're stepping into. Think of the man climbing a mountain. He doesn't fill his backpack with things made for the valley. He doesn't carry the weight of what once worked in a different season. He knows the higher the climb, the lighter the load must become. So he lets go. He travels lean. He chooses between the comfort of staying the same and the summit waiting above. And that choice, though when necessary, is rarely easy. Letting go often stings. You might feel a wave of sadness as you release what once brought you comfort, what once gave you a sense of security. That's a natural part of growth. But always remember this. The pain of expansion will never compare to the lifelong regret of staying small. It's far better to hurt temporarily for a future you deeply believe in than to carry the silent ache of a life unlived. Think of your life as a ship about to embark on a long and demanding voyage. Like a master shipwright inspects every plank, every sail, you must examine your habits, your routines, your beliefs. Which of them are too heavy to take with you? What patterns drain your time, cloud your judgment, or quietly erode your self-respect? Are there people in your life who make you feel safe but not strong, who speak only to your doubts rather than your potential. This is where the hard truth must be faced. Not everything is meant to go with you. And if you try to carry it all, the old habits, the outdated mindsets, the weight of pleasing everyone, the climb will eventually break you. There is a cost to becoming more, but the cost of staying the same, it's greater. It's invisible at first, but over time, it buries you in disappointment. Picture this. A man stands on a dock, preparing to board a ship bound for a new world. The captain stops him, looks him in the eye, and says, "Only what is necessary." The man pauses. He glances back at his old tools, the relics of a life he's known, the things that once served him well. And then he looks forward, toward the unknown, toward the better version of himself. And with a deep breath, he steps forward, lighter, leaner, but more determined than ever. So ask yourself honestly, what must you now release in order to rise? Which patterns, which possessions, which people are tethering you to a version of yourself that no longer serve your mission? Because real growth isn't just about acquiring more. It's also about letting go of what no longer belongs. Before your life can multiply, it must first be simplified. Before your future has room to expand, your present must be pruned, shaped with precision and intention. Raise your standard, and then have the boldness to eliminate everything that no longer meets it. Speak your standard aloud, live it with conviction, and let it sweep through your life like a cleansing fire, clearing out anything that dulls your direction. Your standard is not only defined by what you accept, it's just as powerfully revealed by what you reject. This isn't about cruelty, it's about clarity. You're not turning your back on the past to be harsh. You're choosing to honor your future with integrity. You're making room for the man you are becoming, and that journey demands courage. Courage to say, this chapter is closed. Courage to admit, this no longer reflects who I am. Courage to look someone in the eye and say, I care about you, but I must grow beyond this. Because no man ever reached his destiny by keeping company with compromise. Destiny doesn't live in comfort zones or old cycles. It lives in conviction, in new standards, in unshakable strength. So pause. Look around. Look within. What must remain? What must be released? Then make your move. Move with purpose. Move with clarity. Move lighter and faster. Not because you are rushing, but because you're no longer burdened by what doesn't belong. Let your journey be a reflection, not of how much you carried, but of what you chose to let go in order to rise. Because the man who climbs highest is rarely the one who brings the most. He is the one who brings only what is essential. You grow not by adding endlessly, but by subtracting wisely. And when you make space, true, intentional space, greatness has somewhere to meet you. Let go and rise. Your standards don't just shape your habits. They shape your environment. The room you sit in, the space you wake up to, the order or disorder around you all speak loudly. They're not just background. They're broadcast. A man who surrounds himself with clarity, order, and quiet excellence doesn't need to say much. His space says it for him. He is saying something powerful, even without speaking. Through the space he keeps, through the order he maintains, he is declaring, I matter. My work has weight. My life has purpose. It is not arrogance. It is quiet affirmation. But contrast this with the man who allows clutter to take over, who permits chaos to spread, who walks past decay without pause. He, too, is making a declaration. He is saying, this is enough for me. This is what I believe I deserve. This is all I expect from myself. Understand this. Your environment is never neutral. It is either building you or breaking you. It is training you, moment by moment, whispering messages you may not even hear consciously. But they land. They take root. It sharpens your edge, or it dulls your focus. That's why you must become the architect of your own space. You must build a temple around your habits, a sanctuary around your standards. Walk into your environment and ask, does this space pull me forward or hold me back? Does it ignite my drive or dim my discipline? Because if your surroundings lull you into comfort, you will slip. If they encourage laziness, you will settle. But if they inspire vision, if they echo your purpose, you will rise without needing to be pushed. The path of least resistance will begin to flow toward excellence. Take a moment now. Look around. What do you truly see? Do your surroundings reflect who you're becoming or who you've been? Is your workspace a launch pad or a landfill of distractions? Is your time managed with intention or lost in chaos? Your desk, your room, your daily rhythm, they're not background. They are reflections of what you've allowed. And what you allow, you begin to believe. So do not delay. Not until tomorrow. Begin now. Remove what no longer serves your vision. Clean what you've ignored. Discard what holds no value to your future self. Get rid of the objects, the clutter, the noise that insults the identity you're building. Replace distraction with tools. Replace meaningless decoration with purposeful inspiration. Let your space speak boldly, not of your past, but of your future. Because what you see every day doesn't just shape how you feel. It begins to shape what you believe is possible. And what you believe about yourself quietly molds who you become. But that belief doesn't form in isolation. It is shaped day by day by what surrounds you. You're not just living in a room. You're living inside a reflection, a mirror of your inner standards. Your desk, your clothes, your wall, your schedule, your digital footprint, they all speak. Each of them whispers back a message. This is what you accept. This is what you expect from yourself. Do they speak of excellence? Or do they murmur mediocrity? Do they pull you forward toward discipline and drive? Or do they silently anchor you in apathy? Ask yourself this. If a stranger were to walk into your life unannounced and evaluate your seriousness based solely on your space, your routines, and your habits, what would they see? What would they believe about you? Now, picture walking into the study of a great statesman. The room is still. Every book is placed with care. Notes are ready, not scattered. The chair is aligned, not by chance but by habit. There is no clutter, no noise, no unnecessary distraction. Just the quiet order of someone who takes their mission seriously. And before he even speaks a word, you trust him. You believe he is headed somewhere meaningful. Why? Because his environment makes it undeniable. So, what does your space say about your seriousness? Would a visitor to your life sense purpose? Would they feel intention in the way you keep your world? Would they see signs of momentum, vision, and self-respect? Or would they witness drift, delay, and disarray? Your environment may not be everything, but make no mistake, it is the beginning. It sets the tone. It trains your focus. It builds or breaks the discipline required for transformation. Soon enough, what surrounds you begins to seep into what flows through you. It affects how you write, how you think, how you act. If you desire clarity in your thoughts, begin by sitting in clarity. If you want depth in your decisions, create order around you. If you want to act with courage and vision, surround yourself with bold reminders of where you're going and why it matters. Your environment is either a ladder or a weight. So raise it, elevate it, until it reflects the future you're chasing. Because when your surroundings begin to echo your ambition, momentum is no longer something you have to chase. It becomes something that carries you. Let every wall, every object, every corner of your environment bear witness to your standard. Let them not just decorate your space, but declare your discipline. When you step into that space, it should not feel neutral. It should speak to you. It should whisper, rise. It should challenge you to be sharper, stronger, more focused. Why? Because what you permit around you never stays just external. It seeps inward. It forms your mindset. It either fuels your momentum or anchors your potential. What surrounds you begins to shape what's inside you. Your atmosphere becomes your influence. So choose deliberately and without apology what stays, what goes, and what must now rise to a higher level. Declutter what dilutes you. Elevate what strengthens you. Refuse to live among things that insult your vision. Make your environment not just a space, but a signal. Let it be a sermon preaching discipline. Let it be a reminder of your commitment. Let it echo your values, even when you're silent. And the moment you align your surroundings with your standard, something within you will shift. Your clarity will sharpen. Your energy will rise. The internal begins to match the external, and your momentum begins to multiply. Because at the heart of every lasting transformation is one simple truth. Standards are the foundation of self-respect. A man cannot truly respect himself if he consistently breaks his own word. He cannot walk in strength if his own actions betray his intentions. Each time you violate your own standard, each time you say one thing and do another, you don't just lose progress. You lose trust with yourself. And slowly, quietly, the voice within you, the one meant to lead you, begins to fade. And with that fading voice goes your ability to believe in yourself, to act with confidence, to stand firm under pressure. Self-respect is not built through praise or performance. It's not something others can give you with applause or compliments. It is forged in the private hours, in the disciplined moments, in the choices you make when there are no eyes on you and no reward in sight. It is earned, not granted. It is claimed through consistency and guarded through commitment. And make no mistake, this is one of the rarest, most unshakable forms of wealth a man can possess. To walk into a room not seeking validation, but radiating conviction. To hold your head high, not because you think you're better than anyone else, but because you're living by a personal code you refuse to abandon. That is strength. That is leadership. That is freedom. To look in the mirror and see not perfection, but alignment. That is the quiet, priceless reward of a standard kept. It's not about flawless execution. It's about integrity. It's about looking at yourself and knowing deep down that you honored what you said you would do. That your actions and your values are walking in step. And when you begin to truly value your own standard, when you live it, protect it, and elevate it, others will start to value it too. But be warned, the opposite is just as true. If you bend under pressure, if you abandon your line when tested, if you consistently choose ease over integrity, your influence will begin to dissolve. People may still nod when you speak, they may still smile in your presence, but their trust will shrink. They'll hear your words, but no longer believe them. They'll see your actions and quietly choose not to follow. A man who compromises his self-respect becomes a man without authority. First within his own soul, then in the eyes of the world. Without that internal alignment, no title or position can give him the power he forfeited. Picture a builder laying the foundation of a cathedral. No cameras, no applause, just stone, mortar, and precision. He measures twice. He aligns every edge with care. Not because others are watching, but because he knows that decades from now, when no one remembers his name, the structure will still stand. Not because it was praised, but because it was built without shortcuts. That same integrity must be the mortar of your own life. Every decision you make is a stone laid in your personal foundation. And here's the truth. Weak decisions, compromises, justifications, these are cracks. And cracks don't stay small. They spread. But strong decisions, ones made in alignment with your highest standard, build something that lasts. Something that can carry weight. Something that stands even when life storms around it. So ask yourself, where have you betrayed your own standard? Where have you made silent promises that you never kept? Where have you said, I'll change, and yet kept living the same cycle, hoping a different outcome would magically appear? This is not about guilt. It's not about shame. It's about truth. Because you cannot rebuild what you refuse to face. You cannot rise if your foundation is cracked. Clarity is the beginning of change. Courage is the next step. And every man who's ever built something lasting began by first rebuilding himself. One standard, one choice, one act of integrity at a time. What would it feel like to reclaim your standard completely, without hesitation, without apology? To stand firm and say with clarity, this is who I am. This is what I expect. This is what I do, regardless of whether anyone praises me, pressures me, or questions me. Imagine the strength in that. Imagine the peace that comes from no longer needing external approval to walk your path. Because the truth is, you don't need anyone else to sign off on your direction, but you do need to earn your own respect. That respect isn't handed out. It's forged in the repetition of your discipline, in the unseen victories, in the moments when no one is watching and you still choose to do what's right. These invisible wins are where trust in yourself is built. Day by day, choice by choice, you must be able to trust your own voice again. You must be able to look at your reflection and believe the man staring back has earned the right to be followed, even by himself. So hold your line. Rebuild it where it has been weakened. Restore what you once held sacred. Because no matter how big your dream is, your future will never rise above the level of your integrity. And the man who refuses to violate his own standard, the man who stays anchored when everything else sways, is the man others instinctively trust. They trust him to build. They trust him to lead. They trust him to endure. Not because he makes noise, not because he seeks attention, but because his life speaks with the quiet force of alignment. His consistency makes the loudest statement in the room. Earn your own respect first, then protect it like something priceless. Because once you possess it, no one can strip it from you. Remember this. You teach people how to treat you not by what you say, but by what you allow. Your behavior gives them the blueprint. If you accept disrespect, they will believe it's acceptable. If you tolerate lateness, they will assume your time is expendable. If you abandon your values, they'll follow your lead and do the same. You're always teaching, whether you mean to or not. So be intentional. Set the tone, because your standard is not just your shield. It is your silent instruction to the world. It shows them how to engage with you, how to respect you, and ultimately, how to rise themselves. This is how I expect to be treated. This is what I consider acceptable. When you live with unwavering clarity, others instinctively know where you stand. When your words carry conviction, they carry weight. And when you hold the line, calmly, without apology, you train others to rise to meet it. You don't need to shout. You don't need to explain. Your life does the talking. This is not about pride. It's about principle. The man who honors himself does not chase respect. He draws it in, not through demands, but through demonstration. His behavior speaks louder than any request. His example becomes a silent invitation for others to raise their game. And those who can't or won't, they naturally fall away. Think of a master craftsman, one who inspects every edge, every surface before signing off. His hands are steady. His eye misses nothing. He doesn't release work with flaws, and he never justifies shortcuts. He doesn't preach about quality. He embodies it. And in time, everyone around him rises to meet his expectation. His clients approach him with care. His team speaks with precision. His standard sets the tone. And you, whether you know it or not, are doing the same. In your conversations, in your work, in your home, you're always teaching. Not by what you say, but by how you live. Not through instruction, but through example. Ask yourself, where in your life have you allowed the standard to slip? Where have you stayed silent just to keep the peace? Where have you let your own discomfort slide by so that others wouldn't feel challenged? And more importantly, what would shift if your very presence, your stillness, your structure, your standard became the call to excellence? What would happen if people understood that being around you means operating at a higher level? Not because you force them, but because your example leaves no room for anything less. People often try to change the world with words, but the truth is, your standards speak louder than your speeches ever could. A firm boundary communicates more than 1,000 reminders. A man who respects his own time doesn't need to argue about lateness. A man who lives by his values doesn't have to plead for others to honor them. He simply embodies what he believes, and the world, in time, adjusts around him. That's how leaders emerge. That's how cultures are shaped. Not by shouting louder, not by protest, but by a single individual who refuses to compromise, who holds the line day after day with unshakable consistency. So look closely at your life. What lines have blurred without you noticing? What standard have you allowed to slip just to avoid tension? What self-respect have you silently sacrificed for the comfort of being accepted? Now is the moment to raise it back up. Speak it aloud if necessary. But more importantly, live it boldly and without apology. Never bend your standard to fit someone unwilling to rise to meet it. Because the man who consistently honors himself teaches others to do the same. Not through demands, not through pride, but through quiet, unwavering strength. You don't need to ask for more respect. You earn it. Not with control, but by becoming the kind of man whose life naturally commands it. Let your standards do the speaking. Let your discipline do the teaching. Let your very presence be a signal that excellence is the baseline. Standards aren't born in the spotlight. They're forged in solitude and proven under pressure. The quiet moments may be filled with whispered vows. I'll be disciplined. I'll be strong. I won't fold. It's easy to make promises when the air is calm and the path is clear. But what happens when pressure hits? When the storm comes? That's when the truth surfaces. That's when you discover whether your foundation was made of solid stone or shifting sand. Because anyone can make declarations in peace. But conviction? Conviction is revealed in chaos. And the man who only trains his character in comfort will never be ready when adversity calls. But the man who uses solitude wisely, who steps into the quiet not to escape, but to fortify, becomes unshakable. He sharpens his values, cements his convictions, and strengthens his mental armor. When hardship strikes, he does not panic. He does not freeze. He moves with intention, not because he is fearless, but because he has rehearsed for the very moment others hope never comes. You must begin to see solitude not as absence, but as preparation. Silence is not a void, it is a workshop. A sacred space where your character is formed in private before it is tested in public. It is where you define your boundaries with clarity, where you polish your principles, where you prepare your soul for resistance. The man who takes time to reflect deeply on who he is and who he refuses to become arms himself long before the first challenge arrives. He gains his armor before the arrows fly. But the man who waits for the heat of the battle to decide his identity is already too late. Because fire doesn't make the sword. It only proves if the blade was tempered right. If your character is still a question when the storm hits, the storm will answer for you. That's why now, in the calm, you must carve it in stone. Take time alone, free of noise, free of opinion, free of performance. Sit still, listen, think, wrestle with the truths you've been avoiding. What do you stand for? What will you never allow? What lines will you never cross? Write it down. Speak it aloud. Decide who you are and what you will never negotiate. Because when the pressure comes, and it will come, you won't have the luxury of thinking it through. You'll only have time to act. And in that instant, your response will be the echo of every silent decision you've made before. Picture a seasoned general. Before the army arrives, he walks the battlefield alone. No noise, no crowd, just the wind and the terrain. He studies the slope of the hills, the bend of the river, the blind spots in the valley. He imagines every scenario. He prepares for the worst. Not because he is paranoid, but because he is responsible. So when the enemy appears, he doesn't flinch. He doesn't improvise. He executes. Not because he is lucky, but because he was ready long before the fight began. The same is true for you. Are you quietly laying the foundation of your life? Or are you simply waiting for chaos to force your hand? Are you preparing with purpose or gambling with your future? Are you defining your standard now, in stillness? Or are you hoping to remember it when everything around you begins to shake? Because if you wait until the crisis, it's already too late. Do not let the noise of the world decide your code. Do not let the pressure of the moment dictate your principles. Strength is not something you summon in panic. It's something you install long before the moment arrives. Your standard must be carved in solitude, chiseled deep into your character when no one is watching. Because when the fire comes, and it always comes, it should not confuse you. It should confirm you. Trials aren't the time to discover who you are. They're the time to demonstrate what you've already decided to be. So let silence teach you. Let discipline walk beside you. Let solitude become the sacred forge where your identity isn't created, it's revealed. And when the storm rises, when the critics speak, when the ground beneath others starts to shake, you will stand. Not because you're immune to fear, but because you were built for this. You were formed in the quiet, prepared in the dark, ready before the spotlight ever hit. Remember this. The man who disciplines himself in private walks with quiet power in public. The man who waits for adversity to shape him is not a man. He is a passenger, blown by every gust of wind. So choose to be the rock, not the leaf. Choose the quiet, not the chaos. Choose to define your standard before the storm ever arrives. Because when that moment comes, and it will, you won't be improvising. You'll be revealing. You'll show the world what was built in the stillness. That is the mark of a man who leads. That is how standards turn into legacy. And understand this. Your standard does not end with you. It echoes beyond your lifetime. Your choices today ripple into the lives of those who follow. Your discipline becomes a compass not just for your own direction, but for generations to come. What you build in silence becomes the structure others will walk through long after you're gone. You're not just living for yourself. You live for the echo of your name, the impression of your footsteps, the unseen ripple of your choices across the lives that follow. Whether or not you realize it, every action you take sends waves into the future. Every standard you uphold becomes part of the legacy you leave behind. The man who raises his standard doesn't just shape his own life. He shifts the trajectory of others. His courage becomes a blueprint for someone else's bravery. His discipline turns into another man's conviction. His boundaries become the mirror in which others begin to see their own worth. Children are watching. Students are listening. Colleagues are observing. Even strangers feel your energy. They absorb your tone, your posture, your principles. And slowly, quietly, they begin to inherit the quality of what you consistently accept. Legacy is not built through fame or headlines. It isn't about applause, fortune, or the titles attached to your name. Legacy is built on principles, quiet, consistent choices made when no one is clapping. It is forged in the discipline you uphold when it would be easier to quit. It is built every time you choose what is right over what is convenient. Not once, but repeatedly, until your name stands for something, even after your voice can no longer speak. So ask yourself honestly, what habits are you silently passing on? What patterns are you reinforcing without realizing it? What example are you setting when you think no one is paying attention? Because someone always is. What quiet message does your life speak to those who come behind you? Is it one of compromise or conviction? Is it shaped by comfort or defined by character? Is it marked by procrastination or persistence? You may never fully see the reach of your influence. You may never hear your name spoken by those you've impacted, but that doesn't make your standard any less powerful. In fact, it makes it more essential, because legacies are not always loud. Sometimes they are lived in silence and echoed for generations. Influence is often unseen, but that does not make it any less real. Its power may be silent, but its impact is lasting. Picture a skilled craftsman whose tools are passed down across generations. His chisels worn smooth from years of discipline. His hammers heavy with the memory of precision. Though his hands are long gone, his presence lingers. You can still see his touch in the grain of the wood, in the perfection of each curve. His process became tradition. His standard became a legacy. Not because he ever spoke of it, but because he lived it without compromise. That kind of legacy can be yours. Your name doesn't have to be just biology. It can be a symbol. A symbol of purpose, of strength, of unwavering order and honor. But that meaning isn't given. It's earned. It's built slowly and intentionally, brick by brick, day after day, decision after decision. You don't have to shout your values to leave a legacy. You simply need to live them so clearly, so consistently, that others can't help but feel elevated in your presence. Become the reference point, the living example of what's possible. Let your consistency challenge those around you to rise. Because legacy is not about being remembered with fanfare. It's about being repeated through example. It's about what others choose to carry forward because they saw it lived, not just heard. So raise your standard, and through it, raise generations. Be the man you once wished you had to guide you. Be the voice of clarity in a world drowning in noise. Be the one whose actions, not words, become the compass for those behind you. Don't waste your time chasing influence. Earn it. Don't seek applause or fame. Build meaning instead. Live in such a way that your self-discipline outlives your body. That your values breathe life into others long after you're gone. And one day, far beyond your final breath, when your name is spoken, let it not merely be remembered. Let it be revered. Let it be said with respect, with a pause of admiration. Let your life quietly proclaim, "Here stood a man who chose to live by a higher code. And because he stood firm, others found the courage to rise." That is legacy. That is power. That is the lasting reward, a standard fiercely protected and faithfully lived. Build it now, brick by brick, decision by decision. And then let time carry it forward like a flame passed from one torchbearer to the next. Because in the end, your standards reveal what you truly worship. Every man worships something. The question is not if, it is what. Worship isn't confined to sacred songs or stained glass buildings. It's found in your unseen choices, in the rituals no one applauds, in the loyalty you show to what matters most. Your standard becomes your altar. Whatever you guard, whatever you commit to, whatever you pursue when no one is watching, that is what you revere. If you prioritize comfort over courage, then you bow to ease. If you excuse dishonor to gain approval, then you kneel to the opinions of others. If you spend your time chasing pleasure but neglect your purpose, then your devotion has already chosen its God. But if you rise early and embrace discipline, if you write with care, speak with honesty, and show up even when it's hard, then you are not serving yourself. You are serving something eternal. You're aligning with truth. You're honoring the invisible standards that shape visible greatness. That is real devotion. That is your daily worship. Not in words, but in will. Your habits are the hymns. Your routines are the rituals. Your actions are the declarations. You don't have to announce what you believe. The way you live already says it all. The man who truly values his time does not need to justify how he spends it. His calendar already tells the story. Every block of focused effort, every moment of intentional rest, each speaks for him. The man who sharpens his mind, disciplines his body, and restrains his tongue doesn't have to make speeches. His presence is the sermon. He does not perform for praise. He lives with reverence, quietly, faithfully, consistently. Picture a monk rising early, broom in hand, sweeping the temple floor each morning. Not for applause, not because someone told him to, but because the sweeping itself is sacred. Every stroke of the broom, a prayer. Every moment of stillness, a statement of devotion. His life is not divided into holy and ordinary. It is all sacred. Every breath, every movement, every chore, it all carries meaning. It all becomes worship. In your life, it carries that same potential. Every decision you make tells a deeper story about what you believe. Your posture when no one is looking. Your effort when no reward is promised. Your honesty when pressure tries to bend you. These quiet acts reveal what you revere. They show what you truly hold sacred. So ask yourself, what do your habits bow to? What altars do your routines quietly kneel before? Do your actions lift up truth, purpose, and integrity? Or do they cater to ease, envy, and escape? Because worship isn't just the lifting of hands. It's the lifting of standards. It's treating the small tasks with the weight of great meaning. It's choosing what is right, not just when it's easy, but especially when it's hard. If you want to walk in honor, begin by crafting a standard that deserves reverence. A standard that aligns your soul, strengthens your body, and guides your voice. One that doesn't shift in the wind, but stands like a pillar, unmoved and unmistakable. A true standard transforms your life into an altar where every action becomes a quiet form of prayer. And once that standard is set, you must guard it. Fiercely, consistently. Not because you are afraid of failure, but because you are devoted to something greater than comfort. You return to it not out of guilt, but out of reverence. Because when a man decides to live this way, with honor for time, with loyalty to truth, with discipline rooted in principle. He becomes more than just a man. He becomes a presence, a quiet force, a walking message that speaks to others without saying a word. His life becomes a mirror that reflects not ego, but elevation, a reminder of what is possible. So raise your standard. Build it as if you were building a sacred space. Let your thoughts be precise, your hours intentional, your actions meaningful. Not for recognition, not for praise, but for the higher calling to live a life that matters. Because the world isn't desperate for more noise. It's longing for men who move through life with a kind of silent reverence. Men whose lives whisper of something holy. Let your standard become that whisper. Let it echo in your craftsmanship. Let it be felt in your presence. Let it rise in how you treat others, how you carry yourself when no one's watching. In doing so, let your life itself become your truest form of worship. Because standards are not limitations. They're the strategy of the strong. They are how the focused move through a chaotic world without being swept away. The quiet moments of solitude may help you define your intentions. You might sit alone and say, I will be disciplined. I will be strong. I will not fold. In stillness, it's easy to say those words. But then comes the test, the pressure, the storm. And in those moments, your foundation is revealed. Are you built on stone or sand? Because peace may shape your plans, but chaos exposes your convictions. Anyone can be committed when life is calm. But the man who is only strong in silence is never prepared for the noise of battle. But the man who embraces solitude, not as escape, but as preparation, the one who uses silence to fortify his mind, sharpen his values, and cement his standard. He walks into hardship not unafraid, but unshaken. Not because he is immune to fear, but because he has trained for the very moment others dread. He has rehearsed in stillness for the day chaos calls. You must use solitude in the same way to build in the quiet what pressure will soon expose. Silence is not empty. It is your workshop. It is the sacred forge where your deepest values are hammered into form, your decisions purified, your boundaries carved with clarity. The man who meditates on who he is and who he absolutely refuses to become is the one who walks into battle already armored. His strength doesn't begin in the fire. It is only proven there. Because make no mistake, the fire does not create the sword. It simply reveals whether the metal was ever forged with care. If your identity is not solid before the storm will shape it for you, and rarely in your favor. So take time alone, intentionally, consistently, without interruption, without noise, without distraction. Sit with your own thoughts. Face the parts of yourself you've avoided. Write your code of honor. Speak out loud. Decide what you stand for. Decide what you refuse to tolerate. Decide what you will always protect, no matter the pressure. Because when the moment comes, and it will, when the test arrives, when your standard is challenged, there will be no time left for hesitation. You will not be able to pause and define your values. You will only have time to act, and those actions will reflect what was already decided in solitude. Picture a seasoned general walking the terrain long before the battle. He treads every inch in silence, marking the ridges, the blind spots, the valleys. He knows the ground before his army ever sets foot on it. He visualizes the conflict before it begins. And when the enemy finally comes, he is calm. Not because he's lucky, not because he guesses right, but because he prepared when no one was watching. That same level of readiness is available to you. Will you claim it? Are you building in the quiet, laying each brick with intention? Or are you waiting for the storm, hoping your strength will show up when the chaos does? Are you preparing with purpose while the world sleeps? Or are you gambling, hoping to remember your standard in the middle of crisis? Because when pressure comes, and it won't wait for you to decide who you are. The time for carving your code is not when the crowd is watching. It's when no one else is around. Don't let the noise of the world dictate your discipline. Don't let the expectations of the crowd write your convictions. If you wait until the pressure is high to establish your foundation, it will be too late. Your identity must be chiseled in silence, not scribbled in panic. Set your standard in solitude. Engrave it deep. Let it become part of you, bone deep, before the heat of life tests what you've built. Because hardship is not the moment to question who you are. It's the moment to reveal who you've already chosen to become. Let silence instruct you. Let discipline become your closest ally. Let solitude be the sacred ground where your true identity isn't manufactured, but discovered. So when the storm breaks, when the voices roar, and the world around you begins to tremble, you don't. You remain grounded. Not because you are invincible, but because you have been forged for exactly this moment. You've walked through the fire before the world ever saw the smoke. Remember this. The man who prepares in silence walks with certainty through chaos. The one who waits for chaos to shape him is not a builder. He is driftwood, tossed wherever the tide decides. So choose the rock. Choose the silence. Choose the discipline of preparation over the illusion of chance. Set your standard long before the battle begins. And when it comes, you won't panic, you'll perform. Not as a reaction, but as a revelation. Because everything you've done in private becomes visible when the pressure is highest. And the world? It listens. It bows, not to noise or flash, but to the quiet strength of those who never lowered their standard. Especially in a world addicted to shortcuts, applause, and convenience. The man who chooses principle over popularity stands out like a torch in the dark. Unmissable, not because he demands attention, but because his presence carries weight. While the crowd rushes toward applause, trades depth for likes, and bends values to fit the latest trend, he walks a different path. It is a slower path, a quieter one, paved with resolve, marked by unwavering integrity, and guided by a strength that does not shout but endures. He may not be the loudest voice in the room, nor the fastest to rise in status, but he is steady. And in a world addicted to speed and spectacle, that kind of steadiness is rare. It is also powerful, the kind of power that doesn't boast or seek the spotlight. It doesn't have to. Its very presence commands attention. It holds the line when storms rage, when pressure mounts, when others fold and reach for the nearest escape. You see, most people bargain with their weakness. They make quiet compromises, small deals with mediocrity, little permissions to cross their own line, just this once. And slowly, without realizing it, they surrender the very thing that once gave them strength, their self-respect. They lower their standard for a moment of comfort and pay for it with long-term regret. But there's a rare kind of man who interrupts that spiral. The one who says with quiet conviction, "No, this is who I am." He does not wait for applause. He does not require approval. He draws power not from the crowd, but from his code. That kind of man becomes a force of nature, not because he is flawless, but because he is faithful. He does not drift with convenience. He does not bend to win favor. He stands firm, and in doing so, becomes unforgettable. History rarely remembers those who followed the path of least resistance. It remembers those who refused to trade their soul for comfort or their truth for claps. Their names endure not because they never stumbled, but because they never sold out. They never concealed their values, even when revealing them came at a cost. Picture a judge who refused every bribe, choosing justice over ease. Even when turning a blind eye would have been simpler. Imagine a soldier who stood by his oath. Even as exile threatened to strip him of everything. Or a builder who followed every detail of the blueprint, never once cutting corners, even when no one was watching. These men didn't chase attention. They didn't live for the spotlight, but their integrity outlived them. Their legacy wasn't loud, it was lasting. And now, think about yourself. What if your greatest strength wasn't in speaking louder, but in standing firmer? What if your quiet, relentless consistency became your signature? The very thing people remembered long after your voice faded. In a world where standards shift like sand, what if you chose to remain unshakable? Because the world will test your resolve. It will dangle comfort in exchange for compromise. It will offer shortcuts disguised as success, applause that masks pressure, and validation that tempts you to bend. But that's precisely when you must rise. That's when you show what you're made of. Don't lower your standard to match the world. Raise it so the world has to meet you there. When you hold your line, people notice. When you lead by example, others find the courage to do the same. A life built on principle gives silent permission for others to rise. And in a culture drowning in compromise, clarity becomes rare, even radical. You don't need a stage to make an impact. Just live with such integrity that your actions become your loudest message. Be the judge who honors justice above convenience. Be the soldier who never deserts his post. Be the builder who refuses to betray the blueprint, even when no one's watching. You may never be the trendiest or the loudest, but you'll be remembered. Not for the volume of your voice, but for the weight of your example. Stand firm and let the world adjust to you. That is real power. That is lasting legacy. Wishing you strength, health, and happiness. And don't forget to subscribe to Mindset Daily.